Well, hello everyone. My name is Mike Siver, and I'm the host of this show, and this series is called Repairing Broken Adults. Now, the theme comes from books that I've written, as you'll see throughout the show. One is called Why Did I Do That? And the other one was What Role Did I Play? And so many times I've said it, and I'm sure most of us out there have said it, when you get caught doing something or you do something that gets you hurt, and maybe it's not illegal, it just does something that gets you hurt, you ask, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Well, a lot of that stems from growing up, from things we were taught when we were younger, or not taught when we were younger. And this particular series that we're doing tonight is called House Rules. And so many people, and I'm a counselor, or have been a counselor, I've retired now, and a therapist, and I dealt with so many people that for some reason didn't have a lot of boundaries in their lives, didn't respect a lot of boundaries of other places, people or venues or things. So I've started this show, and I've done a lot of talks with groups on house rules, especially parents, young parents with young children. And a lot of times there's a conflict happens in the home when mom says, well, you can't do that because dad said so, or daddy doesn't want you to do that, or dad says, well, mommy says you can't do that, or mommy says you can't play with that. So it becomes a him and her or a them and us rule situation. So we've started what we call house rules. If mom and dad, before they have children, sit down, and it'll change as time goes on because you're going to think of new things or different things. Mom and dad come up with a set of house rules for the home. And these are established as soon as the children are old enough to understand that the do's and don'ts of the house, whatever they might be, when you come in the house, you take your shoes off before you walk on the carpet. That's a house rule. Dad does it, mommy does it, the children do it. And if you finish your dinner in this house, we finish our dinner before we have dessert. If we don't finish our dinner, we don't get dessert. Things like that. I'm not saying that's one of the rules has to be, because everybody has different beliefs in your upbringing and yourself on what's a rule and what's not a rule. But you come up with a set of rules. Then in conjunction with those rules, you establish consequences. Now, I ask a lot of parents to get rid of the word punishment in their vocabulary, because all the time we hear, I got punished for this, or you get punished for that, and children need to understand consequences for actions. If you have an inappropriate action, there will be a consequence, and this is throughout our whole life. That word never changes in our life. But consequences can also be positive. You get a paycheck for going to work every day. At the end of the week or the end of the month, or however many times you get paid a month, the consequences of you being punctual, being on time, and not getting fired and doing your job, the consequences are you get paid for that. You get benefits for that, you get leave at the end of the year, or however your company and you work it out to be. So consequences is a word I like to replace for punishment. And the courts punish people, but even that's a consequence. You rob a bank and you get caught, the consequences are going to be serious. If you take a life, the consequences are even more serious. So I'm not sure where the word punishment come from, or why it's jumped in there so fast to replace the word consequences. Maybe I need to look it up again, because I've forgotten what it means, dictionary. But consequences are a result of an action, both positive and negative. So when you set up house rules, that the children need to understand that they are no longer going to be punished, or they will never be punished for their actions. There's consequences. If, when they get older, they don't do their chores, well, there'll be consequences for their chores. And it could be anything, whatever your family decides. It could be no TV, it could be no games, it could be something, I don't know. But you want to start early, really early, as soon as they're old enough to understand. Now, obviously, you can't start really young, and I mean too young, because they're not going to understand what you're talking about. But there has to be a stable set of guidelines in the home for stability. This is what's in our house. That way, mom and dad don't get blamed for not being able to do something. The child cannot go to dad and say, well, mommy said, you said I can't do this. Well, no, I didn't. That's a house rule. We can't do this. Now, there's special occasions and special things that are going to happen that are going to require out of the norm rules. So when they get older, things are going to come up that mom and dad didn't even think of. So you want to become a little flexible, but at the same time, you want to understand that a house rule in this house is what everybody comes in this house must live by. They're going to learn that in the future, they're going to go to different places, whether it be high schools, colleges, churches, youth groups, whatever groups they go to. There will be rules in those places. Now, whatever they are, I don't know what they're going to be or what the rules will be. But your child is going to learn one of the first things they're going to try and figure out is, what are the rules if I go in this building? And a good example is that when I used to do a lot of counseling and some of my clients were a little on the rough side, they would cuss a lot, swear a lot. And I used to say, no, we don't swear here, we don't cuss here. Oh yeah, I can cuss here, that's what I do. That's how I feel about it. I'm upset, I'm angry, so I'm going to cuss. I said, okay. Then next week we're going to have our group in a church. Why would you do that? I can't cuss in a church. Ha ha. He knows, or she knows, boundaries already. But they choose to pick and choose where to use their boundaries. They know in a church that you're a little quieter, you don't raise your voice as much, you don't cuss or swear in the church. You're not supposed to. I know some people do. But that's an understood rule. And it's not the pastor's rule or the congregation's rule or the leaders of the group, leaders of the church rule, the consistory or the board of directors of the church. It's not their rule. It's a rule in every church. And it's an understood rule. There's certain behaviors that you don't bring into a church. Well, why does it only have to be a church? Why can't it be our house? Why can't it be the police station? Why can't it be the high school? There's certain rules you do. There's dress codes. There's rules of etiquette and please and thank you and open doors and all that. Why do they have to be so selective and so stand out that I don't want to do this rule because it doesn't suit me? Well, then you build your house and you have rules that suit you in your house. And you raise your children to your standard, whatever that standard may be. I've worked hard on years trying to help parents understand that if you can have a child become consistent and firm in their understanding about boundaries, then that will transfer into adulthood in most cases. Now, there are some times when that doesn't work, but they're very few and far between. And most of the clients that I've dealt with, and I go into the jail every week and deal with clients on different levels, and most of them don't have boundaries. Or they'll know something's wrong, but they have decided in themselves that that particular thing they want, not that they need it, but they want whatever it is, overrides all the rules of life, other people's privacy, other people's boundaries, rules of society. Whatever they choose to do overrides all that. And my question to them always is, why did you think that? Where did you ever get the idea that your rule, that your want is so important that it overrides all the other rules of society, period? And society has caught you, and society has says, if you're going to keep demonstrating those rules, then we're going to take you out of society and lock you up. That will be a consequence of your action. And when they start, and believe it or not, I think this is common sense, but when they start to understand what I'm talking about, and I go in with a couple other chaplains, and we talk, we don't necessarily talk about God, we talk about basic life rules. Now, do they happen to all come from the Bible? Yes. But that's not what we're there to drum in them. We're there to talk to them about life skills, basic principles of right and wrong, that society has established a pattern that allows us all to live in peace and harmony if we obey the rules. And sometimes their question is, well, I didn't set those rules, so why do I have to obey them? Well, when you get to the point where you can influence changing those rules, in other words, you become a politician, or you become on a lower level, maybe a village trustee or a village council member, and you can start to influence changing rules appropriately, not just because your mind says that's okay, then that's what you do. But for you to arbitrarily stand up there and say, well, this rule doesn't apply to me, I don't like it, it says 35 miles an hour in this zone, I want to do 100, and I'm going to do 100. Well, if you keep doing that, you're going to get caught or kill somebody or kill yourself. And if you get caught doing that, you're going to go to jail. That's a consequence for your actions. And that's the kind of stuff that in writing my books, I've tried to get people to look at, that we are responsible to other people for our actions. Now, we're not responsible for other people's actions because we can't control other people. We can only control ourselves. So, a lot of times I'll bring into the serenity prayer from Alcoholics Anonymous. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Well, I tell them there's only really two things you cannot change. And that's the past, that's history, and other people. Other people have to make choices. They have free will to make their own choice. You cannot change them. Now, if they break the law enough, you can control them. You can lock them up and throw away the key and control them, but you can't change them. That has to be a choice of their own, at their own time and their own readiness to do that. So once we understand that society has established a set of boundaries, a code of ethics that we all should live by, we can then have a happier and more fulfilling society. Now that starts in the home. I'm going to go back to the beginning of this because we only got about a minute and a half left. That starts in the home. And if you start in the home establishing boundaries, you don't do this, you don't do that, and yes, you can do this and you can do that, the reward needs to be a positive consequence for those young children who consciously obey the rules. And in the next segment, which will be on in another 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about taking away the reward and punishment part of a saying that families have. Again, it goes back to consequences. These are consequences for your actions. And we're going to talk about being, with a family, being firm, fair, and consistent in your approach to dealing with children. With that, I'm going to say thank you very much, and please contact me if you want to come on the show and talk about anything. With that, I say goodbye for now.